Hello, and welcome to the Women's Stories podcast, where we share wisdom and our stories. We're made up of stories that we tell ourselves every day. Sometimes these stories are written by us, sometimes they're written for us, and sometimes they are written by other people and we need to rewrite them all together. I'm Julia, I'm joined by my baby once again, and by the lovely Alex. Alex is an entrepreneur, an expert in human design, and in particular the projector archetype, and a mother of three. Are you playing hide and seek? I first came across Alex's works via the Healy community, and if you don't know what Healy is, it's a microfrequency device, and there's a wonderful sisterhood community, and we get access to all of these amazing masterclasses. And I watched a masterclass with Alex, and I was intrigued by her insight into human design, which I'd only just found out about, and her entrepreneurship. And in the masterclass, she had her baby with her, and I was like, that's my person, just a bit like me. And since I've joined some of her courses, and I have the privilege of calling her one of my mentors. So thank you, Alex. Before we start, I just want to thank everybody here. This is the part where my baby usually loses it. I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode and for supporting women's stories from around the world. To keep our voices strong and heard, please follow or like or just subscribe from whatever platform you're listening from. That might be Spotify, Apple, or YouTube. It means so much, and together we can celebrate women and their wisdom. So, back to Alex. Alex joins me from the USA while I'm in Australia. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you for having me. It's so good to be here and see this done right with babies on our arms and on our boobs. It's what we got to do sometimes, right?
Yep. Every episode so far, she's here on the boob, kicks up a fuss at the beginning because I'm talking, and she wants me all to herself. But we're here to talk about you, Alex. So you've just become a mother. Well, not just, but you have become a mother again. And something that you weren't maybe expecting, or something that's that's not the right word. Perhaps it's more about how I've lost my train of thought with the baby. You had a baby a year and a half ago, is it? Is that right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you have mentioned how joyful and how wonderful it is to be a mother again. Can you tell us a little bit about your story there?
Thank you for letting me share it. There are so many aspects to it. I'll just tap into my intuition as to what's most beneficial and helpful to share today with you and your audience. So first, when you introduced me and you said a mother of three, I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I've always wanted, and I had my two other kids are older. They're almost 14 and 11, and it was hard being a mom of two. I'm sure you experienced this, especially when they're both pretty little and you can't really reason with them yet, right? And then I always saw these articles in magazines of successful entrepreneur women who are a mother of three. And I'm like, I want to be that one day. Like, I want to call myself a successful entrepreneur and be a mother of three. So it wasn't really like a thing that was so gung-ho on and like it has to happen absolutely. But it was something that I always felt like, oh, mothers of three, they have to have like a different level of patience and self-management. And I guess a lot of my grown-up years, and I'm 47 now, so I had my third baby at 45, which is also such a blessing. But a lot of my, just saying this to share, like a lot of my 30s and 40s, I've spent, especially in my love life, but also in my general consciousness, in my inner teenager still. Like I always felt like I said that, even like I still like feel like I'm 16. So in a way I feel like I'm only growing up really more now. And now that I've understood, like, okay, this is not the discussion we're getting into today, but in my True Sky Cosmic Human Design, I am a different profile and a different type of projector. So I'm a 4/6. So now I understand, oh, that's the 6 line. All the things that I've always thought, like, oh, poor 6 lines. I was a 1/3 in like general human design or tropical or Western or whatever you want to call it. It's like, oh, poor 6 lines. They have to go through this whole stuff between 30 and 50. And now I'm like, oh my God, that was totally what I was doing. I was like reliving my teenage, not really, like I had a marriage and I wasn't like reliving my teenage years in that way. But I was in my consciousness a lot still in my teenage years. So in a way, having this third child is actually what made me grow up more. And not through, I mean, also through the blessing of having this child and it all being so beautiful. But I think what you, from my intuition and from knowing you, you don't want me to just share like the rosy story. You want me to be real, right? And a lot of this has been really hard, and my growing up has come from the big challenges that have happened, especially after the baby was born, in my relationship. And that relationship is a different father than my other 2 children. That relationship was challenging and hard throughout all of the 7 years. There was a lot of love and a lot of trying our best. And I think we both were still a lot in our wounded teenagers together, and that just made for a lot of chaos. But also throughout this entire time of being together, we were pretty clear that we wanted to have a baby together. It was just when and how, and then there was one abortion which was hard early on because he wasn't ready, and then there was a miscarriage. Apparently the baby or someone else wasn't ready. But then this one, I prayed for him, I think, for probably 6 years. Not like on my knees and like in the movies, but in my heart. I just really hoped that I could have another baby, because I just really wanted to have the privilege to experience this one more time. And I guess my prayer was heard, because I always said, I want to just experience what it's like to have a child now that I have this different level of consciousness, which I didn't yet. I was still in my teenager, but I guess the universe heard me and said, okay, she wants to experience this and enjoy the parts of having a small child and a baby that she couldn't when she was in her early 30s, because I was a lot more stressed and I was a different person, and I didn't like going to the playground, and everything they did was too slow for me, you know. And now I can enjoy everything so much deeper. But what was needed for that was that pain of the breakup and that pain of the unfortunate events that happened leading up to the breakup. And like there was a lot of chaos and stuff that I don't wish on anyone, but that a lot of people who have gone through relationships and breakups know that can happen. But that was ultimately what helped me grow up more, so that I actually feel like, oh, I'm actually a woman in my 40s now. I don't feel like I'm such a teenager anymore, and can enjoy having a 1.5-year-old, which you know how much handfuls that is, right? They're just like everywhere, and like it's like, oh, I'm getting out the car, she's putting me down, she wants me to go up the stairs toward the street, right? So it's like, and he's very heavy, so I'm like, I'm very strong now, but I can enjoy all of these little antics and like things going slow, and even the wake ups in the night aren't like how I perceived them in my 30s. I was like, oh my God. And now it's more like, okay, I love having this job. I'm grateful I get to put him back down, you know? So that's a lot of what has changed. And hopefully this is where you wanted me to go, like, but
Yeah, no, this is great. So
yeah.
I totally understand, and well, I mean, I'm not in my 40s, but I think changing our perspective just makes motherhood completely different when we kind of take away the expectations that we think should come with motherhood, then all of a sudden we get to enjoy it, and it's really nice to hear you speak so lovely about the experience and being able to get it again. You know, not everybody gets that chance. They might have regret there, and you've got it. How does the little one fit in with your other two kids?
I would say perfectly. They're all just such little sweeties. My daughter is the oldest, and she did a babysitting certification with the whole, like,
That's cool.
like, how do you call that when you are able to revive people or whatever? First aid
Like
kind of
CPR.
stuff. Yeah, that thing, CPR. Not because she wanted to babysit my baby, but she wanted to start earning some money as a babysitter. And then I said, well, you know, I can pay you for babysitting too. Like, and she's quite affordable, and she's very responsible. So I really like that. What I don't like now is that the baby cries when she picks him up because he thinks she's going to take him away from me, because, you know, that's what
Oh.
often happens. Like, so we have to think of some. I don't think that's a good dynamic to keep going forward always, but she loves him. And my son, who's 11, is a lot more playful with him, but he was so connected to him from the moment I was pregnant. And because of my previous miscarriage, where I told everyone at like 8 weeks, and then the miscarriage was at 10 weeks, and the kids got really sad, and I didn't want to do it again that time, so I waited until 12 weeks. But he knew, like, we had a trampoline, and he said, Mom, come jump with me. And I was like holding my boobs. I said, I can't, my boobs are really heavy today, which, you know, it happens in the cycle sometimes too. And he's like, why, are you pregnant? I was like, anyways. Or I have like a painting with like it's a medicinal, like very colorful painting with all kinds of animals and birds and shamans and jungle plants and animals. And there's one little corner where there's a little baby in a womb, but just the bubble and the womb, and it's so tiny. And he's like, look, Mama, a baby in that picture. Like, nobody ever sees that. Or like, he pointed out Rihanna was, I think, pregnant at the time as well, and she was on a magazine in a supermarket, and he's like, look, Mom, a baby belly. And he had never done that before, so he was just smelling it. And once I told him at 12 weeks, he was like so in love with the baby from the moment he knew about him. And yeah, he's just his bigger protection brother, and the baby loves them both like ridiculously. It's so adorable.
That's super sweet. In case listeners are wondering where my baby went, she didn't want to be here today, so she's gone to the other room to be with her big sister and her dad, which is really nice. She was there, present at the beginning. And yeah, I see that dynamic with my little girl as well. I had her at the birth, and we were reading stories to her about home birth and what was going to happen, and I think that gave her a bit of a connection, and the baby just loves her so much. She just thinks she's the bomb. Like, every time she walks in the room, her face lights up, and she thinks it's great. So I'm glad that you're getting that as well. How does having all the children around fit in with your business?
Well, now it's summer break, so not so well. But I have, well, the older ones, they're kind of not as needy anymore, so that can help. And my son is very active, the older one, so he has a couple of camps, which I'm grateful for. My daughter likes to stay in bed until noon nowadays. And so with the baby and his dad, we have the same schedule as always, and then I just work during those times. I have still kind of I was going to say the German word, Teilzeit, part-time schedule for my business. So I work Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from kind of like 9 to 3 or 8 to 2, something like that. And then I squeeze in other times when the baby naps on the other days, I have the baby Tuesdays and Thursdays for longer periods of time. Or Tuesday afternoons, I have some hours where I have no child. So when it's very important to me, I also sometimes do things in the morning, very early before anything, or before I go to bed, even though I have to be careful with that because otherwise I can't sleep. When my brain gets too into business thinking before sleep. But yeah, I fit it in when I can, but those 3 longer chunks of time I reserve for calls and for more creative work. And yeah, everything that's more on the go, or when I have like an idea for content or for selling something more like on the spot, I do it wherever, because it's like social media can be so fast. And when you're better at knowing how to write your content, then it's actually pretty fast. And there again too, I have like this, I get to do it, not I have to. So that's also why I'm not like scrambling so much for fitting things in, because it's something I really like to make time for, because I love my work and I love my job, so to say. So, and my older kids also understand if I have a work call or need some, they still jump into the Zooms sometimes, because maybe I need to teach them some more respect, but it's also sweet sometimes. And I make sure from my end that I keep certain parts of the day or the week clear, because it's important to me that I actually spend time with these 3 kids that I created, because that's a big piece of my joy and fulfillment as well.
So part of this podcast is about stories and the stories that we tell ourselves. And it's amazing that you're being able to shift the story that you tell yourself to, I get to do these things. I get to have a kid again in my 40s after some trial and tribulation beforehand, after a second relationship. And I get to do this job that I love. And maybe we should explain a bit what is human design, because you mentioned your profile at the beginning of our chat. How long has it taken you to get to this point? Or can you tell us a little bit about the process that you went through to change your story so that you are talking about what you get to do?
All my life, I guess. That's how long it's taken me, 47 years. Well, it always depends on where you start to count, right? I have done a lot of sacred medicine work too before I ever knew about human design. So I think a lot of that also helps your consciousness evolve into more of an empowering story, where you're understanding that a lot of what's going on in here is just a program running, and you can change it. Sometimes it takes an hour or a day or a week of crying. Sometimes it just takes a journaling, or sometimes it takes an ayahuasca journey. Sometimes it takes 4 weeks in the jungle, So it's just all these stories. I think it's just life. We learn to tell ourselves different stories, but there are accelerators. For example, tools like astrology, gene keys, human design, archetypal work, or listening to spiritual teachers, or going into any kind of spiritual practice like Kabbalah or whatever it may be, that can all help you understand things from just, I think, when you broaden the lens and lift yourself above a situation to look what's actually going down there. And one of my first mentors when I started coaching online, Melanie and Layer, she's pretty well known, so I'm sure not everyone, but a lot of people might have heard of her. She started, she was always talking about shifting the stories and how we get to actually, that we get to do things instead of having to do them. So when you hear people who are successful in what they do, talk about how they do, what they think, how they perceive things, and what their tools are. That's usually what I pay attention to.
Yeah, that's really nice. It's really nice that I get to interview you as my mentor and have the flip side, and but also just to be talking to somebody that's already there. I mean, it's obviously a progress, and there's more to come. But to have already shifted their story is so amazing, and I'm sure you've rewritten it like a million times, and you will rewrite it again, especially as your third child grows up and impresses his personality more and more into the family dynamics. So, what exactly is human design?
Oh, human design is based on several tools. So it includes astrology, it includes the Chinese I Ching, which is an ancient divination system. It includes Kabbalah, it includes the chakra system, and something else that I may have forgotten. But so it creates a chart and an archetypal profile, if you will. It can get a little dogmatic when people take it too seriously, so I don't want to say so much more and allow people really their own exploration and experimentation with it. But it's just a beautiful understanding of where do I fit in the world, and am I how can I best operate in this system. And like with astrology as well, there are different calculations that you can do. So the regular human design is based on Western astrology, which is that is a little older calculation, which is not where stars really are in the sky when you are born. That is called true sky or true sidereal astrology or cosmic human design. So, but that's just coming out of hiding a little bit more, because traditional human design and traditional Western astrology is pretty big, and it also serves a huge purpose. But what the beautiful thing is that you get a birth chart, and it's not based on questions. Like, because what you said, our stories change all the time, and all these personality tests where you answer questions, I can answer one of those tests completely different in the morning than in the evening sometimes, or 1 year to the next, right? And we have to shift our stories sometimes on a daily basis if we want to keep growing, because that is the definition of growing, is to become a bigger and better version of oneself, and that requires a more empowering and story and a broader lens every day. And this is just what human design can help you with, when you understand all of what the numbers mean and what the centers mean and what your type means and what the profiles mean. And if you have heard of human design before, if you're listening to this might say something to you, but if you haven't, then the first thing you might want to do is pull a chart somewhere, just Google maybe free human design chart and start going from there. So but it's very complex, but it's a really wonderful rabbit hole.
And how did you first come across it?
Same mentor I already mentioned. I was in her
Right.
1 year container, and everyone started talking about, this is my type in human design. I was like, what is human design? And like, you have to get your chart. And so I got my chart, and I was like, okay, now I don't know what that means, but then you go from there. And you always find the resources if you want to know.
And do you look at the chart for your children?
I do. I looked at their tropical or traditional human design first, obviously, and then I categorized them in my head. This child is this type, that type, and this type. And I treated them accordingly, which is something that now I looked at their true sky, where the stars were actually when they were born chart, and each one of them is a different type. And it made me realize how dangerous it is when we treat our children in a way how we think they are or should be. So my daughter, being the oldest, she was most confused about this at first. She's like, what? Now I'm not a projector anymore? But she's handled it really well. And now, like, yeah, sorry, I mean, you're still a projector in that calculation, but where the stars really were, like, now you're this type. And it actually, the challenge is always we use these charts to explain away behaviors, right? So in her old chart, I could explain, oh, she's this way because of that thing in her chart. But her natural energy and interests are interestingly way more like her real sky chart, true sky chart. So it's interesting how that goes sometimes. But what we expect of our children and how we treat them is often how we condition them in a way that is not meant for how they are most supposed to be, right? So I treat it with a lot more caution now and responsibility.
Yeah, but then there goes that whole, I mean, you were talking before about, the children come to us or they don't come to us, and almost that they're teaching us lessons. They're our teachers, and then later on in life, then they use our conditioning to grow. So we're kind of helping each other along, because without them coming in, we wouldn't be growing, and without them being raised by us, they wouldn't be growing. So we're like entangled, meshed.
Yes. And I think especially mothers can be incredibly hard on ourselves for trying to do it all perfectly, right? Oh my gosh, I don't want my child to be traumatized because of my upbringing or because of my parenting, right? Or I don't want my child to have to go to therapy later in life because of me. But it's really beautiful when you see it the way that you see it, what you just said, that our conditioning helps them grow later in life, right? Because they have to overcome that anyways. And if it wasn't our conditioning parentally, it would be society or something else anyways. She's back!
Yeah, baby's back.
Hi, sweetie.
She just loves being here on the podcast, making lots of noise into the microphone. Okay, let's try and find something else for you to play with. Yeah, I mean, I think I saw something recently that talked about how you can, when you really have come to a place of growth and you see your parents, you don't forgive them. You do forgive them. It's not like you condone. Can't find the words. It's not like that you are happy with what's happened if you have something that you didn't like, but you forgive them because it's all part of your process of growth. And I really like that. I would really like to come to a place where I see my parents as teaching me and helping me grow, as opposed to giving me all their baggage and then choosing to love them and come from love again.
Well, but you see, one of these ways of thinking is victim, right? How, like, what have they done to me? And the other piece is empowerment mentality of like, okay, they gave me this package and now I can grow with it, right? That's taking self-responsibility and taking ownership of your life. And those are polar opposites. And no matter how you call it or which practices you follow, I think, or if you have a coach or read self-help books, everyone pretty much agrees that it's not healthy to be in victim mentality, right?
Yeah.
So all the work, shifting stories or human design or astrology, like, okay, there are also people who use these systems to keep people in victim mentality, but in general, the work is always to become more empowered and to become less of why was this done to me? And instead, oh, this is my package. Great. How can I use this to my advantage and make my life better?
And it makes sense if you believe that we choose our parents and we come into their lives because that's what our soul wishes. And yeah, you're right. It is much more empowering. The whole I get to do this, and this is the package I have.
Yeah, you get to do this too. You get to have, these are the sweet moments you remember later, right? When you had your little baby on the podcast. And now you're just like, ah!
Focus. Yeah, focus. Don't show anything on camera.
Yeah. I'm sure I flashed one or two of my masterminds. Anita, do you need a nap? Did this baby need a nap? The hair. You are so cute. I just love babies. They're such a blessing.
I mean, that's why I love working with mothers, because I just there's so much that we can learn from the experience. And I suppose you're also coming to that period of your life where you're also going through a transition. Did you say that you were going through your Jupiter return or something like that?
Oh yeah, I got my Jupiter return this month. It's going to be very exciting.
Can you explain what that is?
I only roughly know, but it only happens, I guess, every 12 years or so. So one of my astrologer friends asked me, what happened to you 12 years ago? And when she asked like that, I was like, oh shit, is something terrible coming up? And she's like, no, it's your Jupiter return. Did you have like a huge blessing or something like 12 years ago? And I was like, oh yeah, we bought our second house in San Francisco, and it looked like it almost wasn't possible, but it went through somehow. And it's like San Francisco real estate prices, if you know, you know, but that was a huge miracle that happened together with my ex-husband. So I'm curious to see like what happens this month. It's just Jupiter returns to, I guess, the placement where it was when you were born or something like that. I'm not sure if like any astrologers on here, they're gonna probably throw stones at the screen, but I don't, it's just it's a big amplification of blessings. That's all I know.
And if your son is 11, were you not pregnant 12 years ago?
Yeah, I was 7 months pregnant when we moved into the new house. That's why I wanted a house with less stairs. Our bedroom was in the attic in the old house with like a spiral staircase, and I didn't want to do that like with a newborn. So we were looking for a new house, but also to keep the old house to rent it. So it was a third trimester move.
You were in your third trimester.
When we moved, yeah.
And what are your favorite things to do with your 1.5-year-old?
Right now, going in the yard barefoot and spraying things with the hose. He loves watering everything. We like going to the playground. I like taking him on walks in his stroller, but it's too hot at the moment. I just personally really like taking him to everyday activities, like to the supermarket or errands that I have to run. Just that's always been something that I really like to do with all my kids, just to show them also when they get older, like why do we choose this product over that, so I can just do normal life things with them. And and going to friends' houses and playing with their other kids, and just also really love snuggling him to sleep nowadays. And I was so upset when my ex didn't want to sleep train, but now I'm like, oh my gosh, I get to snuggle him to sleep.
No, that's nice. I mean, like you said, there's pros and cons and everything. it can be a challenge when there's another person in the picture, and it can be a challenge when you're by yourself, but then you get to decide things by yourself as well.
Totally. Oh, she started crackering, huh?
Yeah,
Crackers.
I think she's hungry. I think she's this trial and error. I never completely know if it's sleep or if it's hunger or if it's boredom or whatever it is.
It's usually one of those, right?
Yeah, just tick it off, and then eventually you'll come to whatever you need, whatever she needs. Beautiful. So I want to wrap up our conversation now, but before we go, I've been asking my guests this question about the stories that we tell ourselves, and if we need to rewrite them. What would be your advice to anybody listening that wants to get to that place where they feel so empowered that they get to do things in their life?
First of all, because it sounds like most of your audience is women, I would say cry it out without a story. Like, that always helps me shift things so fast, and without complaining, without being in victim mode, just allowing yourself to be really, really sad or really, really angry, and just giving yourself that space and time to move through that emotion, having a friend there if you need to, but ultimately it's the most empowering thing when you can just do it yourself without a story attached, and just knowing, oh, my body is just integrating a new reality and I'm letting out tears, and in 10 minutes this will just be better. And then everything in life where you feel pain, or where you feel challenges, or where you feel doubts and fears or not good enough, those I would say are a great starting point to journal on what are those disempowering stories that you're actually holding, and who can help you. If maybe you can help yourself, maybe you can journal, like, what would I rather believe, right? Because everywhere, like, I truly believe that the Creator wants the best for us in all areas of life, and where we're not experiencing that, we have to do a soul correction. We have to go through something in order to shift that. And sometimes, unfortunately, that's hardship, challenges, pain, hurt, chaos, but that is a gift and a blessing, and then again we get to shift that. So therapy is wonderful, like any kind of spiritual practice can be really helpful, plant medicines can be helpful, whatever it is that clicks with you and helps you move from like feeling kind of sorry about yourself and your life, and like things like you're not in charge, right? Wherever you're feeling like you're not in charge and having a hard time seeing the results that you want to see from life, that's where you get to do this work.
Beautiful, beautiful advice. This is why I like working with you as well. It's always so lovely and so calm and so full of wisdom.
It's a chaotic life that brings it with it, I guess.
Life experiences, yeah. I mean, yeah. And like you said, there are those moments that catapult you to the next level, like becoming a mum or maybe doing plant medicine. But yeah, thank you very much for coming and sharing your story. I'm really glad that you get to be a mum again and that you're enjoying it so much. I'm glad that you've come into my life, and things are changing for me too.
Yes.
And then we made it through another episode with this one. We'll see how the sound is like.
I think it'll be perfect. And at one point, she'll be so active that you might have to lock yourself in the room for an episode.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you noticed, there was a jailbreak as you were talking. Somebody came in, got something, went out. Yeah, they can't. 40 minutes is like their max. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.